What is up, everybody? This is Nick from P2W Fantasy, joined by Anthony today from P2W Fantasy, talking about some different things here. Thought about some different topics to talk about. I don't think we need to go too much into any sort of personal matchups from this past weekend. Anthony, I know that's a soft topic from you. I know you have a lot of things to say about injuries and this and that, but we're just going to avoid the topic of what happened between us this weekend and jump into the topics today. So the first topic that I got going on today, actually, let me pause real quick because I'm just rushing into this whole thing. Anthony, how's it going?
It's a tough weekend overall. 1-3 in my leagues this week in my 4 leagues, but the one win was an important one, so we're going to stay positive and hopefully next week's better.
Yeah, the one matchup that was important for me between us two was the one in the BMF, that IDP mixed league, because man, I think you're tanking for Trevor in that league, but I'm like under 500, trying to get close to 500, so that one's important. But other than that, I had some weird matchups. Like last night, I was close to catching up to Colin in another league, our buddy Colin from Shotgun, in a sleeper league, because Brashad Perryman decided to go off last night, and Denzel Mims was catching some balls too. So I was like one big play away from there. Did you have any ones that were like super tight? Like, was the one you won super tight?
No, I won by a good margin. My team's, I think, head and shoulders above everybody in that league. But
yeah, I agree.
The one matchup that we had was in my league, mine and yours matchup. I think it was pretty close, with me and you scoring maybe the top 2 in the league. And I wish I had some healthy running backs, because Jermichael Hasty did not help me out. And my other running back as well, I can't even think of who I started, but got under 5 points too, and that hurt me this week.
Yeah, it was a tough streaming week with the buys and some injuries going on too. So the first topic we got going on today is player pause. So AKA, buy or sell statements, but we'll just make it a little bit more creative, and we'll say player pause these tracks. And by tracks, I mean statements. So we're approaching week 10 of football, and there's time, it's getting towards that time to start thinking bigger picture, how things will finish. So I got a couple that I thought we'd talk about today, starting with the MVP of the league. So here's a statement, and you tell me if you would play this track or pause it. But Russell Wilson is a lock for the MVP this year. Player pause.
Yeah, that's actually an easy pause for me. You can't discredit what Wilson has done throughout the season with the Seahawks. He's been a great player. Obviously, he's in talks for MVP. But one guy that you cannot count out right now is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, in the last 2 games, has thrown 9 touchdowns. 9 touchdowns in the last 2 games is a lot. Now, Russell Wilson still leads the league in touchdowns. But if you look at their stats here, you see that over the season, Russell Wilson has 8 interceptions. And the stat that really points to Mahomes for me is Patrick Mahomes has 1 interception throughout the entire season, which is very impressive.
Wilson's actually 4th in interceptions in the league too.
Yeah, so he's got some troubles with the turnover game a little bit, but Mahomes, he's catching up in that touchdown total. If you look at the team records, they're going to be pretty similar, I think. So if Mahomes keeps up what he's been doing the last couple of weeks, I think he's going to run away with it. But Wilson's, he's right up there too. So I wouldn't say it's a lock. I'm more of a pause on this, just because Mahomes, in my opinion, is the favorite.
Yeah, I wrote down Patrick Mahomes is another guy too. Obviously, the Seahawks are 6-2. Russell Wilson's number 1 in touchdowns, number 3 in completion percentage, number 4 in passing yards. You did talk about the turnovers there. Mahomes is right behind him in touchdowns. He's number 2 in passing yards, though. His completion percentage is not close to Wilson's, but the Chiefs are 8-1. They're a good team. Another guy to throw in there, which I hate to say and talk about, though, is Aaron Rodgers is kind of sneaking into that MVP race. The Packers being 6-2. He's number 3 in touchdowns, number 9 in passing yards. He's having a hell of a season for missing Devontae Adams for a few games, and then not having Allen Lazard for a lot of this, and even Aaron Jones is a little bit banged up. But what Aaron Rodgers has been able to do in these games this year to keep the Packers at 6-2 has been kind of scary too, especially when they haven't been 100% healthy. So I think he's another guy that's kind of in the mix. So I wouldn't say Russell Wilson's a lock. You can never count out Patrick Mahomes. My dark horse, I think I have to take him off the list, but I think I told you before, with the Steelers being 8-0, Big Ben was a dark horse for me because, the team's doing well. They're winning games. He's slinging the ball, but now he's on the COVID list. We're not sure if he's going to play this week, and he's a little bit banged up. But, most valuable to their team. I think also, you look at Russell Wilson with Chris Carson, he balls out when he's healthy, and obviously Lockett and Metcalf have had huge games. Obviously Wilson's leading the ship, but that's why I kind of threw Aaron Rodgers in there, just because he's really, really guiding that ship over there. And I think he's the most important piece of that team. Some might argue otherwise, but I got a quick question here. You guys think Mixon, Carson, and or Mostert have a chance to play this week? I think camp talks have been very silent. I was listening to the fantasy football podcast with Field Yates and Stefania Bell and Matthew Berry, and they said there's not a lot of talk about Mixon or Carson, but there's some optimism there. Do you know anything about Mostert?
So Mostert's the one who I think has the least probability to play this week. I know that they're supposed to be firing up Tevin Coleman, I believe. But Mixon,
especially since Hasty is super, super average. And
honestly, probably below average in my opinion. But in terms of Mixon, I think Mixon actually has probably the best chance to play this week. But we know how these things go. We got to monitor it every day. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I've read something too. Just looking into these things, if you have their backup, let's say you were stashing Gio Bernard, or you had DJ Dallas on your roster, keep those guys until it's 100% clear what's going on with them. That's important. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, but I was in a league, McCaffrey's back, and I threw out Mike Davis, and now McCaffrey might be missing time. So you got to be careful what you do with those backups in some leagues. Next statement here. Alvin Kamara is going to finish the year as the RB1. Are you playing or pausing that, Anthony?
I'm also going to be pausing this one. Yes, he's the number 1 running back in the league right now. He looks great this year. I'm not a personal fan of Kamara's. I've always kind of been a hater of his just because he hasn't rushed for 1,000 yards in the season yet. But when I'm looking at the points here, 211.6 for Kamara, and this is just in a standard PPR league. And one thing that stands out to me is he's pretty head and shoulders above everybody else besides one person. That other running back that he's very close with, who has 201.1 points, so it's really only 10 points behind Kamara, is Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook also missed a game this year. So when I look at how Dalvin Cook's been playing over the last few weeks here, we always talk about trends. I think Dalvin Cook might finish the year as the RB1, especially if he's able to stay healthy. I know that's always a concern of his, but how he's been running, what he did over the Packers defense the other week, he had over 200 yards. He is looking very, very scary. It looks like he's a league winner for fantasy purposes. I'm going to put my money on Dalvin Cook finishing as the RB1 with Kamara falling behind at some point. I also do see that Derrick Henry's the running back 3, but he's a good 60 points behind them right now. I don't see him catching up a lot of ground. So it's going to be a 2-horse race there. And I think Dalvin Cook's going to be my RB1 at the end of the year.
I'm going to agree with you on that. The scary thing about Kamara is the receptions. He's number 1 in receptions for running backs. the count for that is 60 receptions on the year. Guess how many the second place running back has for receptions?
I couldn't even, probably in the 30s, I want to say.
43. So he's 60 to second place 43. So playing in PPR leagues, obviously that pushes him a decent amount ahead of some other running backs. As far as rushing yards, though, he's number 13 in comparison to Dalvin Cook, who missed time, like you said, and is number 1 in rushing yards. The touchdowns between the two, looks like Kamara has 5 rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving touchdowns, and then Dalvin Cook has 12. The scary thing with Dalvin Cook now that, he's back, he's healthy, he's just destroying matchups. The last 2 games, he scored 51.6, which is almost an automatic L, and then the other week was 44.2. I think Dalvin Cook doesn't have a guy that's going to take away a major piece of his game, whereas Kamara does. Michael Thomas has been out for many games, if not most of the season this year. And having that person to throw to might mean throwing less to Kamara. I don't think a lot of people think about that aspect of the game, especially when it comes to where are those passes going. So he's killing it in the passing game. I think it's going to decrease a bit with Michael Thomas being back. Your boy Aaron Jones would have been an interesting running back in this conversation, but he fell off a little bit. Did he miss a full game, right? As well. And
I think he missed a few. And even when he played last game, they were being very careful with him, not giving him too many touches. So
yeah, so he had the bye, and then he missed weeks 7 and 8. So I think that kind of took him out of the running for the RB1, but he would have been maybe one of my picks to finish the year as that too. So I think we'll both pause in Kamara. I think we like Cook better for the both of us for that finish. All right, so next statement here, play or pause. James Robinson finishes the year as the rookie RB1. Play or pause?
I'm going to play that one. Looking at Robinson, his role is not going to decrease. He's got Jake Luton at quarterback now. They're not going to be, in my opinion, throwing the ball 50 times a game. They're going to use Robinson as much as they can, and that was evident last game. Jake Luton was a quarterback, and they ran the ball with Robinson 25 times. That's volume that is going to score fantasy points. When you look at other rookie running backs, the names that pop out to you are Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Swift, Taylor, Antonio Gibson. And the closest guy to Robinson in points is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Robinson had 149.5 points, where Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 127. So Robinson's ahead of him by 22.5 points right now. Do I see Clyde Edwards-Helaire maybe having some big games and catching up a little bit? Sure, but Robinson's volume isn't going to go away. He's going to score steady points every single week, and I don't see any of these other rookie running backs catching up to him. I think it's too late for Swift. Taylor has been a letdown to a lot of people. Gibson's too far behind now, so the only really opposition he has is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think Robinson's going to pull away from him and finish as the RB1 for rookies.
Yeah, CEH is the closest as of right now. Robinson is the RB4 overall. I got our boy Mendy popping in. Look at that P2W swag. Selling T-shirts, man. Just trying to, Anthony's trying to feed all his 10 kids. He's like Phillip Rivers. No, he doesn't have any kids. But we do have some P2W T-shirts. I have that as a pinned tweet for anybody who wants to rock that out. You can cut the sleeves off if you want to be more like me with how I roll on the podcast. But James Robinson, RB4. Edwards-Helaire, RB9 on the CEH has more rushing yards and he has more receptions. The clear difference here is the touchdowns, 7 total touchdowns of Robinson versus CEH has 3. So that gives them a little bit of a gap in fantasy. Robinson's averaging, I think, around 18 and CEH is around 14. So there's a difference there as well. Antonio Gibson's RB15. DeAndre Swift, RB18. Jonathan Taylor, RB19. I think the the red flags with some of these other rookies is their situations that have changed. Outside of DeAndre Swift, I think DeAndre Swift continues to grow in his system. Jonathan Taylor, fumbled the ball last week, and then they limited his touches. CEH has been playing fine. Bell actually hasn't been as good as people thought he was going to be, but he still has him, and he still has the importance of Travis Kelce and the importance of Tyreek Hill. Antonio Gibson, McKissick is taking a lot of involvement in this offense. I know that's a guy, you were talking about a little bit to me in side conversations and stuff, but it's the truth. He's swallowing up like 6+ receptions the last couple of weeks here. So I think Robinson, the volume alone makes him the RB1 for the rookies in the situation that he's in. I think he is a key point of that offense. You can look at DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault and Keelan Cole and those guys, but James Robinson gets the volume, and it's clear that he's a volume guy. So I'm going to have to go with James Robinson on that.
Yep, McKissick had 9 receptions last week.
I mean, Antonio Gibson, he's a good play. You're not fading him, but, I mean, he's not growing in that system. All right, next statement here. You're going to play or pause this. Devin Singletary lost his job. Are you playing or pausing that?
So I'm going to play
if you need to play it and then pause it a little bit to figure things out, I mean, whatever you got to do to get through this track.
Yeah, I'm going to play it. I personally believe it's going to be more of a timeshare than a complete job loss. But when we look at the last couple of weeks here, it's clear that Zach Moss is getting more involved in that role. Last week, Singletary only had 2 carries throughout the entire game. Zach Moss had 9. That's a big difference for somebody that's supposed to be a starting running back.
And you probably don't like either, but if you're plugging in a guy who's rushing the ball twice and he's got the tag RB next to him, that's concerning.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Personally, I'm probably staying away from both of these guys. I might try to sell Moss because of his recent play, try to sell that he's going to be the guy there, but I can't see either of these guys kind of having a firm hold on the job. I don't think that they're going to completely fade Singletary out of the system there. I don't think that they're going to completely give Moss the keys to the offense either. So at the end of the day, I don't think Singletary is the starting running back. I think he's more in a timeshare, and he might be the number 2. He might be 2A to Zach Moss's 1A, in my opinion.
Unless they're in the red zone, then it's Josh Allen's the number 1 rusher, and then the other 2 are A or B and C. You can look at the season numbers for both guys. Zach Moss, 6 games, 4 total touchdowns. Devin Singletary, 9 games and 1 touchdown. So there's a clear difference in touchdowns. There's also in the benefit to Devin Singletary, there's a clear difference in receptions, 24-8. Again, we're looking at a guy who played 6 versus 9 games, so there's a difference there. So Singletary does have more rushes as well. You can't just look at the recent games to make an opinion. Some would say that's recency bias, but at the same time, you can look at some of the recent games and look for trends. In weeks 7, 8, and 9, here's the RB finishes for these 2 running backs. Moss, RB7, Devin Singletary, RB38. Moss has had 35, Singletary 36 touches across 3 weeks of football here. That last game with Moss getting 11 touches to Singletary's 5, I think that's concerning because if it is a timeshare and it starts to shift one way, I'd be concerned with the guy that it's not shifting in your favor. So if you are the Devin Singletary manager, you're not dropping him. You don't ever do something like that. You're not trading him for the low, and you're not trading him for nothing. But at the same time, maybe if he's your weekly flex play and you look at this trend of, hey, Zach Moss has been more efficient and he's taking more touches than Singletary, it might change your mentality for plugging him into that flex, especially if the upside's limited because of that. So if Singletary, like we talked about before, 1 touchdown in 9 games, he might catch some, balls out of the backfield, but if he's not getting the touches past another running back in the system, he might have lost his job. And if he didn't lose the job totally, he might have lost the job in your starting lineup. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, both of these guys, you just kind of, I don't know if you're comfortable starting either of these guys until you see a couple more weeks of what the Bills plan on doing. So
Yeah, it might just be more of a situational play versus, hey, I used to start Singletary on a weekly basis there. Next player pause statement. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are the best fantasy combination of wide receivers in the league. Player pause that statement.
that one's tough.
It's
And
tough, and I got a long list of guys we can look at, but you playing or
yeah,
pausing that?
well, let me look at it. How I look at this earlier. Metcalf has a total of 167.8 points this year. Tyler Lockett has a total of 156.5 points this year for a total of 324.3 points this year. I think the next combination of strictly wide receivers isn't even close.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't know how you want to go about this. If you're keeping it just wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce have combined for more points this year than Lockett and Metcalf have.
That's a true fact. What about just wide receivers
Just wide
combinations?
receivers, fantasy purposes, I think there's, in my opinion, off the top of my head, there's only one core group of wide receivers where I think are comparable with them.
All right. Don't give that away. Don't give that away. I'm gonna ask you DK and Lockett or this group, and you tell me who you take. And then if I get to that wide receiver duo, then you can get into it. Sound good?
Okay.
All right. So let's just say rest of the season. How about rest of the season we're talking about here? So DK and Lockett, or maybe I'll start easier. DK and Lockett or Tyler Boyd and Higgins. So real quick, I'll just say what DK and Lockett are. DK is the wide receiver 3. Lockett is the wide receiver 5. Tyler Boyd is the wide receiver 13. T. Higgins is the wide receiver 29. Would you rather have T. Higgins and Boyd or DK and Lockett?
That's an easy DK and Lockett for me.
All right, moving on. Robert Woods is wide receiver 16. Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 24. Would you rather have them two or DK and Lockett?
That's another easy DK Lockett for me.
Okay. I'm just going to go through this list here. Mike Evans, wide receiver 19. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 62 due to injury. Them two or DK and Lockett?
That one's a little bit closer. I'd still lean DK and Lockett.
Okay. Amari Cooper is wide receiver 11. CeeDee Lamb is wide receiver 18. Them two or DK and Lockett?
If Dak Prescott was there, it might be a different story, but you're going to go DK and Lockett.
Quarterback situation. I agree. Pittsburgh, Juju is wide receiver 23. And let's say any combination of Claypool or Deontay Johnson.
Because of what you just said, there being 3 of them there, I think you got to lean for DK and Lockett because you're not going to get 2 guys going off every week when that third guy's in the lineup.
All right, I got two more here. This one's interesting because I don't think I'll get into why, but Will Fuller, wide receiver 14, Brandon Cooks, wide receiver 28. From weeks 5 through 9, Brandon Cooks has been wide receiver 9, and Will Fuller's been wide receiver 15.
So this one, a lot of people might look at it and be like, well, how can you compare the two? But it's actually a lot closer than I think most people think.
I agree.
Brandon Cooks has been going off this year, and Will Fuller's been going off this year. Those are 2 guys where you could have got for pretty cheap in the offseason or drafted pretty late in a startup, and both of these guys are producing very well. In terms of just talent-wise, rest of the season, I have to lean DK and Lockett, but both of these guys are actually producing very well in fantasy.
Yeah, I wanted to throw that in there later just because when you go through this list, not enough people would give Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks the credit that they should get this year because they're killing it on a weekly basis. They're winning matchups. The last one here, DK and Lockett or Julio Jones, wide receiver 17, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 8.
So this is the one that I was going to reference when I first started. This one's extremely tough. When you look at it like this, would you rather have DK Metcalf or Calvin Ridley? Let's just say those two are comparable. A lot of people might lean DK. Personally, if Calvin Ridley hasn't been hurt, I think he'd be right up there with DK. He's wide receiver 8 right now, and he's been dealing with an injury the last few weeks here. So if he's
He
playing those
missed week
weeks,
9.
yeah. So if he's playing and I believe he got hurt during week 8, if I'm correct on a
Yeah,
slant,
yeah.
yeah. So if he plays full games in both of those games, I think he's right up there with DK. So that's pretty close in my opinion. Tyler Lockett and Julio Jones. Lockett has been producing very well this year. Julio is another guy that's been dealing with an injury. So looking at Julio to Lockett, I actually might lean towards the Julio Jones side in terms of a weekly output. So if both are healthy and going forward, they get no injuries to either any of these 4 guys. I actually think Ridley and Julio might be producing a little bit more than Lockett and Metcalf. The reason behind that is Lockett obviously had 2 monster games this year where he had multi-touchdown games, tons of yards, tons of targets, tons of receptions, but that doesn't happen every week. So I don't know if I'm going to see more monster games out of Lockett. I think you're going to see a lot of good games, solid fantasy outputs from Lockett. But I might think that consistently Julio might put up more points than Lockett on a weekly basis. So it's a toss-up for me, but I might lean towards Ridley and Julio just based on Julio being the more talented receiver than Lockett, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a tough one right there. What happens on a weekly basis with the Seahawks and the Falcons is that other teams come in and throw the ball all over that defense for both teams. So that allows in fantasy the same thing to happen for the Falcons wide receivers and the Seahawks wide receivers, just because they have to stay in games and they have to throw the ball out. That's why Russell Wilson's cooking, which has been trademarked or something like that. Let Russ cook. I think he trademarked that. But it's really close. I think Lockett, as of late, has not had the best of weeks. I don't have those splits in front of me right now, but his points are kind of carried by those huge weeks that he did have. But he does show you that he has a high ceiling for that. Same with Julio and Ridley, though. I'd say one separating factor for me is Russell Wilson over Matt Ryan. I'll take Russ over Matt Ryan rest of the season without thinking twice. So I would take that. But on the flip side, in a perfectly healthy world for these 2 wide receivers on the Falcons, I might take that Falcons side rest of the season. But that's the issue for me. I don't know if we're going to be realistic. Will Calvin Ridley come back from injury and not get banged up again because he's been hurt like throughout the entire season? Julio Jones has been banged up here and there throughout the whole season. So in a perfectly healthy world, I might take the Falcons core. Realistically, though, I think I trust the longevity of the Seahawks wide receivers. All right, last one for the play and pause. I wrote down here, Davante Adams finishes the year as the wide receiver 1. He currently is a wide receiver 2. Tyreek Hill is a wide receiver 1. So what are we thinking for that? Play or pause Davante Adams to finish the season as wide receiver 1?
Yeah. So sorry, I got the weather alert going off here, but to keep it simple, I don't want to get into a lot of stats and details here, but Davante Adams, wide receiver 1, the answer is yes. I don't want to get into details. Everybody should kind of look at this and understand my thought process here. Davante Adams will, in my opinion, 100% be the wide receiver 1. So you could get into more details if you want to, but I think it's a straightforward yes for me.
It is for me too. Tyreek Hill has played 9 games. Davante Adams has played 6 games. You look at some of the scoring for Davante Adams. Week 1, 41.6. Week 7, 44.6. Week 8, 30.3. Week 9, 33.3. Week 7 through 9, he's had 108.2 points via Fantasy Pros. The next closest wide receiver score across those weeks, so he said 108.2, is 76.4. That's insane. That's insane. If this guy is healthy, he is going to get targeted somewhere between probably 12 to 17 times a game, and he's going to score like crazy. If you are playing against Davante Adams, I talked about this in the Triple Play podcast. If you are playing against Davante Adams, you are nervous already because it's going to sway already, no matter what, almost in your opponent's favor in terms of scoring. If they project Davante Adams to score 16, 17 points, he's not scoring 16, 17 points. I'll tell you that right now. He's going to score a lot more. But yeah, he's my clear-cut wide receiver 1 for the year 2. I actually have one last one here. One last one. I saw this from Paulie Sleepers, who I had on the podcast before. He tweeted this, and then I tweeted out something today that had to do with this guy, and somebody else said it's a shame that he's not projected as a top 12 dynasty wide receiver. It's Terry McLaurin. All right. Player pauses. Terry McLaurin is a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. Do you play or pause that?
That is so tough. And honestly, I looked at this and I'm like, I want to say yes very bad. McLaurin, I only have one share of across 4 leagues, but I love that share of him that I have because even with a terrible quarterback situation, he's producing. So I love McLaurin, but I'm going to say it's a close but no for me for top 10. The reason behind this is I was just trying to sort it out. I was writing down names. I looked and I wrote down Metcalf. I'd rather have Metcalf than McLaurin. Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Michael Thomas, Calvin Ridley. That's 7 right there. And Chris Godwin, I'd probably throw in there too, 8. And then Michael Thomas, 9. The thing is, I mean, with this 10 spot, I think it's a toss-up between some of these guys. You got, I think I mentioned Lamb, but you got Keenan Allen, who's been going off with Justin Herbert. And Keenan Allen's a guy that a lot of people don't talk about, but seeing that connection he has with Justin Herbert, it's hard to not throw him in your top 10 at this point. Then we got Allen Robinson, who, as Bears fans, we know how talented he is. Quarterback situation's not great. Would you rather have Allen Robinson or Terry McLaurin? I mean, that could go either way, I think. And then you got guys like Tyler Lockett, you got Juju. I mean, there's so many guys that you could toss into that top 10. I think it's very close with McLaurin, but I'm going to say he's just outside of the top 10 for me because I'd probably take those 10 guys or 10 of the guys that I named above him at this point.
He's a current wide receiver 12 right now, averaging 17.2 points. Obviously having a good year. I think he's a prime example of a guy who it doesn't really matter who his quarterback is. If it's Dwayne Haskins, if it's Kyle Allen, if it's going to be Alex Smith, he's going to perform well. Fantasy Pros has him in dynasty rankings as the dynasty wide receiver 11. Here's their list right here. Davante Adams, Michael Thomas, Metcalf, Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, A.J. Brown, Kenny Golladay, DJ Moore, and then McLaurin. Under McLaurin's Cooper, Lamb, Allen Robinson, Jefferson, Diggs, Keenan Allen, Julio, Juju, and Mike Evans. So looking at the guys above him right now, I mean, you know I'm a massive DJ Moore truther. He's right above him at number 10. I might bump McLaurin over DJ Moore just because of what we've seen this year so far and the inconsistency, of his involvement in this offense. Godwin, I would bump down a bit. I don't think he's that high just because look at the situation he's in and the volume he's, guaranteed. Kenny Golladay is very, very good. I think he probably should also be in this top 10. It is tough because I think a lot of these guys, obviously Adams and Michael Thomas and Metcalf and Hopkins and Hill, like these are clear-cut, obvious ones. But I think McLaurin's a top 12.
So
like you said.
Would you, like guys below him that you mentioned on that list, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb, do you have both of those guys above or below McLaurin at this point?
I'd really have to think about that. I'd really have to think about that. I'd say McLaurin might be above Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen with Justin Herbert is very, very good. I think they have a great connection. I just think that maybe an age difference plays a factor. Oh, you can hear it's like storming, huh? I can hear out the window. It's like coming down hard. No, I think there's a factor with the age difference. CD Lamb obviously needs Dak. He's got other guys involved in this offense. It's tough. It's tough to rank dynasty wide receivers. It really is. That's something we might have to come back to. Maybe do something on the offseason where we get together and do that. All right. So with the weather getting bad, let's whip through the rest of this podcast here. Second half players. So guys we think are going to have better second halves of the season. I'll start with mine for the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson's the QB 11 right now, not having the best season. We expected a lot more from the MVP from last year. He's been above 25 points 3 times, but also under 15 2 times. He's averaging 19.9 points, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think 3 rushing might be mixed in there somewhere. Against the Colts, he threw 82.6% completion rate, which was good. I think the schedule allows Lamar to be better this year, the rest of the year. New England, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh. I'd say Tennessee and Pittsburgh are tough, but then he has Dallas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, New York Giants, and Cincinnati. So that's all easier matchups. Running back, I got Miles Sanders, who missed a few games, RB32. Weeks 2 through 6, he was the RB10, so he can be a top 10 guy. 2 out of the 5 games, he's at 20-plus points. Easy schedule coming up for the next 3. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 36 right now. He had his breakout game. The last 2 games, he's had 24 targets. And I think he's much more linked up with Drew Lock. And then my tight end here is Evan Ingram, who's a tight end 11. Back-to-back 10-target weeks. The last 3 games, he's been the tight end 3. Weeks 1 through 6, though, he was tight end 19. So we are already seeing better out of Evan Ingram. Any of those guys are you against?
No, I mean, I could see all of them improving. I mean, they should, given the situations, given the schedules and everything. As a Lamar Jackson owner and BMF, haven't been too happy with him, but I definitely think that a lot of those guys are going to hopefully take a step forward and do better second half.
All right, who are your guys?
So, quarterbacks, I mean, this is a little biased, but I'm definitely going to go with Sam Darnold here. I'm looking at what the Jets did against the Patriots last night.
Hey, I have a quick question, though. Are you sure he's getting that job back? Because Joe Flacco looked pretty fucking good last night, outside the stupid interception.
What I will say is, did Joe Flacco look okay last night? Sure, he looked fine. But this is the first time in how many games where he had a healthy Crowder, a healthy Mims, and a healthy Perryman, right? Sam Darnold's been thrown to Braxton the entire season as his top receiver. I personally think if Darnold played last night, they could have won that game. Just because I think that Sam Darnold's a good quarterback, but we're not going to get into that. I think going forward, he's going to step in. He's going to have weapons for the first time. Hopefully they can stay healthy. With Mims, it looked like they had established a decent connection right off the bat. Perryman's back. Crowder's back. I think that you can only go up from here with where he's been playing so far. So hopefully he takes a step forward. I'm probably not going to plug him into my lineup anytime soon until I see some progress, but he's going to be my quarterback right now. Running back, I know you're not going to like this one either, but I'm going to go with David Montgomery. And David Montgomery, looking at him right here, I saw a stat today on Twitter. He is 7th in the NFL in carries. He is 6th in the NFL for RB targets. That's clear volume, okay? The thing that's concerning to me is, here's another stat that I saw, is that David Montgomery had 89 yards versus the Saints last game. He had 89 yards and 84 yards after contact. That means he's getting hit every single time he touches the ball, probably before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. That's terrible.
Do you think there's any reason behind that, him being slow getting out of the gate, or no?
Well, that's what everybody wants to rip on David Montgomery, saying he's slow out of the gate. he has probably no holes to run through. He gets the ball handed off to him. He probably looks up and he sees he's about to get lit up. So I can't even blame him at this point. When you look at that stat, he had 89 yards and 84 yards after contact. That's ridiculous. What is the offensive line doing? You can't blame him for that. It's not like he's just getting hand off the ball and just standing there waiting for somebody to touch him before he runs. He's getting hit every time he touches the ball. So outside of my little rant there, I could see him taking a step forward just because of volume. I hopefully think that offensive line could do something to prevent him from getting lit up every game. But that's just an awful, awful stat, and the offensive line should be ashamed of themselves with that. And so David Montgomery is my tight end there.
The only thing to pay attention now with David Montgomery is going to be the concussion. I think he's on concussion protocol, so be careful with the news for him in your lineups this week.
Yeah, and I wonder why he got a concussion. But anyways, the wide receiver I'm going to go with, another one you're not going to like, Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown. Yes, he's been a disappointment. Yes, I've seen all over Twitter everybody talking about getting rid of him, trade him while you can, drop him, do whatever you can with him. But I'm not going to give up a hope on the Ravens wide receiver one. I think Lamar Jackson, as you said, as your quarterback, is going to do better the second half of the season. And I think that if he does better, then Marquise Brown is going to do better. He has already talked about, as you've mentioned previously, he wants to get Marquise involved. He thinks he's a huge part of the offense, but he's not getting him involved. So, yes, you could put blame on Marquise, but you got to look at Lamar Jackson there too. I think he knows that he isn't doing too great of a job. I think that if he steps forward and does better the second half, then so will Marquise. So that's pretty much my take with him. He has showed flashes of being good. He showed flashes of doing nothing at all. So high risk, high reward, maybe not too high of a reward. We'll see what happens second half. And finally, tight end here.
Real quick on the Marquise take. It was weird. It was weird to hear Lamar talk about wanting to get him more involved. But across the past 2 weeks, he's had 7 total targets. He had 10 in week 5. So I'm hoping he does swing up because he's important in that offense. But his target share has to increase. So I don't know if that's Lamar, if it's route running. I don't know what the case is. But 7 targets in 2 games. When he had 10 in week 5, that's got to improve, and I hope it does.
Yeah, and the thing with that as well is, I mean, you could blame Marquise Hollywood, but then you look at guys like their tight end, I can't think of his name off the top of my head for some, Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews, yep.
You look at Mark Andrews, who went absolutely off last year, and he's got guys like Nick Boyle getting just as many targets and receptions as him. So are you going to blame Marquise and Mark Andrews for not producing, or are you going to blame Lamar Jackson for doing whatever he's doing? I don't know why Nick Boyle is getting so involved, you know? Right. So that offense
who's your tight end?
Sorted out. And tight end, I'm going to go with Mike Gesicki. He's been another guy a lot of people are down on. I think he's going to benefit with having Tua at quarterback. Last week he had the most yards and catches since week 5 with him. Main reason I'm going to pick Gesicki is I believe in talent. I believe that the talent is going to outweigh everything else going forward. And I think that as Tua gets more comfortable, as he's slinging the ball more, I think Gesicki is going to be a benefactor of that.
Sorry, I had to pull. I'm just pulling up. I wanted to pull up Gesicki's last game. 4 targets in the last game against Arizona. That's not bad. It's better than the 2 that was there before. But they also barely threw the ball into his first game. But I'm going to agree with that. Keep an eye on Preston Williams' injury. You know, it looked like Preston Williams was unleashed last game. Mm-hmm. And it kind of sucks that he had to leave the game early because he was getting connected with Tua and looks like they were going to be a good combo. So if Preston Williams is to miss time, I think Gesicki's a benefactor of some more target volume. Isaiah Ford was dealt to the Patriots, so they have Jakeem Grant working in the system who can do some things, but he's not going to be a guy that swallows up a ton of targets every week. And Devontae Parker is dealing with injuries on and off here and there. So, yeah, I like Gesicki because Tua looked good. Tua looked really good last game. I think he was like 20 for 28 or 22 for 28. He was good last game. He was mobile last game. What we saw in college, we saw last game a bit for Tua. So I think that brings optimism for the skill players in the Dolphin system there. So I like those calls, kind of, but I could see your justifications for most of them there. So it's always important to look at these because, like I've said before this week, trade deadlines either passed or they are coming soon. So maybe you're starting to look at some other rosters before all you have is waivers. So you might be looking, hey, these guys are not performing well, but there's some optimism for them moving forward. And those are ways to identify trade targets. So, all right. So that's going to be it for the show today. About 45 minutes in. You probably heard the storm coming out from behind me. So I got to cut out kind of a little bit earlier here. You can find me, Nick, from the main brand and at P2W Fantasy, at P2W Fantasy. And you can find Anthony at Anthony P2W on Twitter. Probably put the potential for some more content, whether it's an article or podcast later this week. We do have T-shirts available if you are interested at all. Anthony's wearing one on this stream right here. Gray and black. It's pretty cold. You can wear it under a sweater. You can wear it with a jacket. You can put Under Armour underneath it and just walk around when it gets a little bit colder with it. You can wear it when you work out. You can wear it to a wedding. There's a lot of different places you can rock the P2W shirt. And if you do rock it, at me and Anthony on Twitter, and you're automatically our homie. All right. So thanks for watching, Anthony. Any final words?
Yeah, you could follow me at Anthony P2W. Make sure you're following the main P2W fantasy page. For you guys watching on the stream, pick up one of these T-shirts. They're very nice. And like Nick said, you could wear them to a lot of different events. You can wear them at any time or just wear it by itself with nothing else at all. So do what you got to do. Pick up one of these T-shirts, add us, and you'll be one of the boys or girls.
Or girls, yeah. I'm telling you, though, like I like a lot of you guys, and a lot of you guys are cool. But like seeing somebody tag us like, hey, got a T-shirt, man, you're automatically like in the squad. All right. Have a good night, everybody. And thanks for watching.